Welcome back to Between Two Racks with the Kilo Crew. This week's episode, another installment of Rapid Fire Q&A. So, let's kick it. This first question, it's going to be on Hyrox. So I'll read the question, but then I do have an explanation of what Hyrox is. I know you're somewhat familiar with it, but I don't know how much Steph and Alex really know about it.
Before we get into it, do you know what Hyrox stands for? Because it's going to make you vomit.
No.
Tell us.
Hybrid Rockstar.
Really?
Yeah.
And it started in Germany, so that's interesting.
Yep.
So actually, I'll do the breakdown of. So Hyrox is a global fitness race that combines running and functional strength training in a standardized format. You run 1 kilometer, then hit a workout station, sled push, row, wall balls, and repeat that cycle 8 times. It's held indoors, so every race is the same format worldwide. Your times are ranked globally, whether you're in the open, pro, doubles, or relay division. So the actual event is always the same. So it's 1 kilometer run and then the ski erg, 8 rounds of the ski erg, right?
It's a set distance. I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. So 1 kilometer run, ski erg, 1 kilometer run, sled push, 1 run, sled pull, 1 run, burpee broad jumps, 1 run, rowing, 1 run, farmer's carry, 1 run, sandbag lunges, 1 run, 8 wall balls. So it's that all the time.
I don't think it's 8 wall balls. It's maybe an 8-pound wall ball.
Yeah. Oh, I just said 8 because it's total 8 rounds.
Okay.
So like it's in total, it's 8 kilometers of running, and then it's
8 different
fitness stations. And then most people finish the race in about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on their division and training. The top, so male athletes, it's 55 to 65 minutes. Top female athletes, 65 to 75 minutes. And the world record is just under 55 minutes for men.
And then, depending on what class you're in, the weights of everything change.
Yeah.
So
and there's,
pros are heavier. And
then there's relay where you're breaking it up with a team. You're going back and forth. So there's different groups.
But there's no strength event per se.
No.
Okay.
It's all cardio.
Yeah.
And like even like the lunges, it's
the
for
sled push,
distance.
sled
Like
pull,
everything's for distance. Very, very much cardiovascular.
It's all sagittal plane too.
Yep. Yes.
No, but it simplifies the training.
Yeah. And it's knowing exactly what the events are simplifies it as well compared to.
Yeah, because they never change. That's very different compared to like what CrossFit is. Okay, so now the first question. Hyrox is actually a fast-growing sports in the hybrid fitness scene. You are, as an average athlete, facing a race time of 75 to 90 minutes with a mix of, everything I just read. So the whole time you are close to your anaerobic threshold and have a huge lactate buildup. Do you at Kilo train athletes of this sport, and what would be your training approach if you have a 6-month time frame? So no, we haven't, but that's why I kind of read what the breakdown of the event is so we can have a discussion on it.
Yeah. So my biggest issue with how I've seen people train for this is a lot of people train for this just by
doing it. Yeah.
Doing it. Exactly. Whereas there's definitely a time and place for simulations and doing trial runs and stuff like that and working towards your anaerobic threshold, but it's too demanding to do for the 6-month period that I just said. So you're going to have to build qualities that are going to try and make the event easier. So build your aerobic base, because that's going to help with the lactate clearing and pushing your anaerobic threshold a little higher, so you're able to work harder for each event, pushing your strength levels. So each time you go to do like the lunges and stuff, because I can't remember what the weight is, but it's not heavy lunges. So say that there is say it's a 40 kilo lunge. I don't even think it's that much. It's probably a 20 kilo lunge. All of a sudden, if you can lunge 80 kilos for reps, you have a massive strength reserve every time you go to do that event. So each time you go to do it, it's a lot easier. So building your strength, building your aerobic base would be by far the most important GPP elements and then push the anaerobic side of things more as the competition gets closer would be my gut reaction to what should happen. But I haven't actually sat down and tried to make out a long-term plan to how I tackle doing it.
Yeah. You have any thoughts?
Not really.
I mean, definitely everything that you just said, but also like, especially for, I mean, just doing it too. Like, even if they're not doing it like 3 times a week, I mean, they should probably do it at least once a week just so they can get used to that whole, like, you know, the anaerobic and then the strength part mixed in.
Yeah, I would definitely take more of a, somewhat of a block periodization approach and really try and develop qualities. Just because if you're doing a concurrent approach that you're trying to just maintain it throughout, it might be a more fun way of doing it because you're just getting to mix up your training. But I don't know if they'll ever fully saturate the quality enough to really drive the quality up. And if they're not doing that, they're not going to build the base that they really need to be able to push performance come the end. Because if you're looking 6 months out and you're just going to say, we're going to do a little bit of everything for 6 months.
No, but I'm saying, like, do like our regular type of training, like what you just described, but then still have that exposure to having that whole event, like doing that whole like hour of whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Maybe once every 2 weeks.
You need to do it to practice the transitions and stuff like that. But like to do it once a week at all out intensity for 6 months, I don't see what would be the advantage. Like we'll just use it more as a practice run and stuff than to just do it. Like that's like that would be like a marathon runner, like once a week doing a 42 kilometer run to practice the event. It's just not.
Yeah, no. Okay.
No.
Yeah, but it's definitely a very it's both complicated and straightforward to prepare for because you know exactly what you want to achieve, but it's a very demanding event. So you definitely have to build a big base of aerobic and anaerobic and drive your anaerobic threshold as high as possible because it's anything that you're working at your maximum for over 45 minutes is going to be pretty brutal.
So what's the hybrid part about that sport? It seems like it's one quality.
I would somewhat agree with that. I don't think the strength element is demanding enough that I would consider it very hybrid.
CrossFit is definitely way more hybrid by nature than Hyrox.
I would agree. I'm not sure what the loads they use for the pro version. Maybe they're heavy enough to justify it, but I'm not certain what that is. But yeah, it's very much a anaerobic threshold dominant sport, and that's somewhat it. Because to me, the strength work isn't strength enough to be considered like a true expression of like hybrid.
Yeah, because even in the exercises, it's like ski erg isn't really strength ones. You have sled push, a little bit.
And pull.
Yeah, sled
and the
pull.
lunge, and that's it.
Yeah, because wall balls is not a strength.
Farmer's carry.
Yeah. Like, again, I think the farmer's carry is maybe 40 kilo, so it's...
And then I think it's because it's a lot of general population getting into it. So that's why I think maybe they still will say it's more of a hybrid strength just on that basis, not as much as like a pro level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely more accessible for a wider range of people.
Yeah, and it's done a great job of building the community aspect like CrossFit did, especially because most people get into it in the relay version, so they're working in partners. So obviously the demands overall aren't as much because you have someone else to work in. The way the partners works is both partners have to do all the runs, but then you can split up the in-between events. So you do 10 reps, I'll do 10 reps, and so you're getting a slight rest in between. So which really lowers the entry point, which is great. But they've done a great job that way, but yeah, it's a lot.
I'll kind of try to tie this in because I know another question that was brought up is not a question but a topic suggestion, which we could potentially do another podcast episode on as well, but it kind of ties into this. So it was energy systems training. So in regards to energy systems training with someone training for Hyrox, how would you choose to do?
Well, you're going to train. Well, you can somewhat bypass the anaerobic alactic. It's not really going to be very relevant, but you're going to drive your aerobic capacity and aerobic power as high as possible to delay the onset of that anaerobic threshold. And then you're going to have to work in your lactate capacity, and to build really efficient lactate capacity, you also have to build lactic power. So you're going to drive that a lot as well. But obviously you have to start with the aerobic base and then introduce that there. And then you're going to have to balance between the two, because you can't do 3 months of lactic capacity, lactic power work. It's going to be too much. So you're going to have to balance in between the two, so it's not too demanding of training.
Yeah. So, and then I would assume that you would recommend the volume of air, because the question was like for 6 months, how would you train for it?
Yep.
So I would assume that you would recommend having a higher volume of your week on aerobic work the first 3 months. Then the last 3 months you shift and you have more volume of work done on the anaerobic lactic.
Yeah. And like right now I'm deep in aerobic training research. And like, so the big thing now is if you really want to drive your VO2 max higher, which is going to be the biggest determinant for success in a sport like this, it's going to be huge. The best way to do that is be training at intensities 90% and above of your VO2 max. So the more time you can spend above that there, and then how you dedicate your training to get to those is going to be really different. It's going to be an interesting topic when it gets to the webinar. Just another couple of weeks of research first.
Okay, next question. Again, not really a question, more of a topic. So you talk a lot about strength training for team sports. Would love to hear your ideas regarding strength training for endurance sports. All kind of is the same thing.
Well, it's the same thing, but it's just not as important, because the strength demands of those sports aren't as high, so you don't need to dedicate as much time to the strength training. They still definitely need to do it. You still want to increase their strength reserve. You still want to work on all the posture and muscles, so there's better efficiency in their whatever sport they have. But you can definitely get away with less frequency and less volume for those sports, because they're getting a ton of volume with their sport itself.
But one thing though that I think is important for people to understand is to us, it's not, if you're doing an endurance based sport, because now he's not even talking about like team sport that have an endurance bias. He's talking about non-team sport. So then we're assuming that it's long distance running.
Yeah.
So this is a simple task in terms of motor patterns. So even in the weight room, the strength training program does not need to be nowhere near as complete on a motor pattern perspective, because the task is so much more simple. Like there's no change of direction. There's no overload, like knee joint resiliency when you have like a linebacker on your back. So it's way more simple. So what we would recommend, like Pork said, is you don't need as much frequency or volume of strength work in your training week, but don't make the mistake of training strength endurance in the weight room, because that's already what you're doing so much of practicing your sport. So still focus on improving maximal strength, but also do make sure that you have some phases when you're working on hypertrophy. And it's not that hypertrophy helps performing an endurance sport, because up to a certain point, if you have too much muscle mass, it's more muscle and cells to fuel, but you still want to do some hypertrophy work to avoid losing hypertrophy at key joints that will make you more susceptible to overuse injuries. So hypertrophy is still important up to a certain point. Max strength would still be your main objective with your strength training, but you just don't need as much of a wide array of exercises. You don't need as much complexity in programming. It's very straight to the point, and all of the true complexity comes more with the energy system training.
And even for your max strength work, you don't really need to get super low in reps. You don't need to be down in the like real high end relative strength. So you don't need to be the 1, 2s, 3s. Like max strength from 4 to 6 reps is probably going to be a lot more beneficial for that type of athlete as well.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind too that typically, if you're doing an endurance sport, you have a predisposition for it, so you're most likely to be more slow twitch.
Yeah.
So even if you want to work at 85% of 1 RM, it's probably not even 5 reps. So 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 reps might be max strength for these type of athletes.
Top 3 books to read for new coaches and trainers.
Because that's a hard question because it's how new.
Yeah.
Because if it's like brand new, it's a different answer to, they've been in it for a year, 2 years, have an understanding of the basics and want to really solidify their knowledge. So brand new, I'll have to think about the next step one. Because it's what we're more used to dealing with. Yeah. Definitely Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zasiorski, 100%. I would probably say the NSCA Essentials to Strength and Conditioning. I think that's a very wide, broad book that covers a lot of things. It's maybe not all exactly what we would think, but it's very well done. And
what's good about that one too is although there's a lot of like scientific like explanation of concepts, there's also a decent amount of practical aspects. Like there's like it teaches you how to test for a 1 RM, or it gives you like an anaerobic lactic field tests, and it's very practical in that sense.
It introduces you to a lot of the different pieces of it.
Like, and even goes as far as explaining some technique and how to spot and stuff, and like in the later chapters. So yeah, I suppose it's a very beneficial for that earlier stage coach. I'm trying to think of a third.
For the new coach, one that I think would be super helpful would be How to Write the Strength Training Program by Ian King.
Yeah.
Just because it's a very simple step-by-step, like let's say you have no clue about how to write a program.
Yeah, you can.
It's definitely older. I think it's like 99 or 2001 or something, but it's still quite relevant and it's super systematic and simple. Is it necessarily the way we would write programs? No, but it's still a very good.
A good base.
Oh, yeah, really good base.
The Tuderman-Hartman one, it's very good. Fitness and strength training for everyone, something like that.
We always struggle with
the little green one. I can just see it there. I just can't see what it is.
Fitness and strength training. That's all it says.
Yeah, but then there's another aspect to it. Fitness and strength training for all sports, like Hartman and Tuderman.
In regards to, because obviously if someone reaches out to me via email and they ask, okay, I'm a new coach, where do I start? And I guide them through, like, now my main thing is the MAP assessment and then the program design and periodization. But even for those, like if you're a new coach, any one of those books that you recommend, would they prep them necessarily for, say, like the program design course? Because in that course, we don't break down like reps, tempo, sets, and all of that. So if they don't know that,
King's book would probably be the one that would prepare them the most for this, because like all the other books we're talking about, it doesn't
get into that.
Doesn't really get into that. It's more, they explain what.
Like Polygon Principles would be another one. Because it gets into sets, reps, tempo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The 1998 Polygon Principles could be good. Yeah. That'd be good because it does talk about the tempo. Although that book, it's the 3-digit tempo. I think.
They updated it. Yeah.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're not going to find the 98 one anymore.
Yeah. But then, like, if you're more advanced, though, and it's a tough read, but there's so much in-depth information, I would say Super Training by Verkhoshansky and Meltzev. But it's just a brutal one to read.
So what are the principles of program design for specializing on a lift versus writing a program that is complementary toward many different movement patterns?
Well, so specializing on a lift, there's two approach to it. So you can do more sets and more frequency on that specific lift to improve technical skills. So if it's a really complex lift, like a snatch, for example, this would make sense. Now, or so let's say you're more advanced, your coordination and skill at the lift is really good. Now you need to deconstruct the lift and see where's the limiting factor. Like, what are the limiting factors in terms of muscles, and then what is the limiting factor in your expression of strength within the movement. Like, are you having a hard time at the beginning of movement, in the mid range? Are you having a hard time in the lockout? So you need to look at this, and then you use the complementary work, kind of like in the optimizing strength ratio, to address these limiting factors within the lift itself. Because at that point, to just keep doing the lift more and more and more and more won't necessarily allow you to get better at it. You need to correct the deficiencies that prevents you from improving your strength.
Yeah, so the big thing is we generally don't take the 100% all in, we're going to focus on one lift because of the detraining aspect, which was brought up. We don't, like, I know for me personally, there's very, very, very few instances that someone needs to specialize in a lift to that extent that I find it worthwhile completely detraining other movement patterns. So why would I completely move away from them? I'm going to do at least a maintenance volume of every other phase, or whatever way you want to classify your maintenance volume. But if for some reason you choose to go the high frequency approach, so like you see the squat every day programs, like the go for 4 to 6 weeks, the really important thing then is the higher your frequency, the more sub-maximal you're going to have to train. Because if you're trying to squat every day to improve the efficiency of your squat, which will definitely drive up your squat, you need to be sub-maximal or you're just going to crash and burn. But for most people, I think it's a mistake to go that route with your training, because unless you're doing like Olympic lifting training where the movements are so complex that training the movement every day is going to have a huge benefit, I think it's way more beneficial for people to, you can still increase your frequency, but twice a week of a lift is more than enough to have a high frequency, and then make sure you're still training the other movement patterns to avoid the retraining of that. But
and also it's understanding the context. So if you're training for powerlifting and your sport is 3 lift, or if you're a shot putter and we know that the incline press is a great predictor lift because it's a very simplistic sport and on a motor pattern perspective, then it makes sense to focus and specialize on one lift. But outside of that, in my opinion, there's no reason outside of optimizing your strength ratios on a general health and performance standpoint to specialize on a lift. It gives you zero advantage to do so. So you just have to be careful on why you would want to do this.
Yeah. If you look at our primate program that was on the 14-day microcycle, where you have exposure to all the lifts within that 2-week period, is a great place to start with a lot of your general pop people that don't have a specific goal, that just kind of train like that. So then you're never detraining because you're always exposed to the same, exercises like every 2 weeks, and it repeats. Yeah,
but I do think Steph pretty much nailed it to start with. Like, our optimizing strength ratios is how we go about specializing in lifts. Yeah, and that's how we lay it out for each lift.
Yeah, but then again, it's just in the early stages. If you're a novice and your front squat sucks, and I mean we teach this in one of our course, but that's why you have to be careful. Like, optimizing strength ratio is part of our foundation, but it's a foundational piece that comes later into your training.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because as a novice, if your front squat sucks, it's not necessarily because of strength breakdowns or weaknesses in certain muscles. It's most likely because your technique sucks. So then at that point, higher sets, lower intensity, higher frequency and exposures will go a long way, because now you're improving the skill. But once the skill is there, that's when, like, doing 12 sets or doing every day that lift, like, it won't do anything for you unless you're in a really, really high intensity relative strength phase where you showcase zero weaknesses in terms of remedial movements and stuff like that. Then you can afford to do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sets to try to drive a higher response. But you can only do this in the context that everything else is in check. Because if you're doing all that specialization, so let's say you're doing a back squat and you're doing all of that specialization, but the real reason why your back squat is weak is because your lower back is drastically weak. To do 12 sets of squat won't necessarily fix the issue that makes you have a bad squat. So then you need to spend more time focusing on the posterior chain to actually help to drive a higher squat response, which has nothing to do with doing more squatting sets or a higher frequency of squats. So that's why we prefer that approach, because it suits a much wider range of the training population.
Yeah. I mean, even the end where it says, can you give me a few examples in your past? I know you've kind of talked to them in the examples you're giving, but I do know over the years you've had a few times when you're coaching power lifting. So then going back to, like, you just having, that athlete has those 3 lifts they need to perform. So what are your biggest priorities when you're programming for them? Like, how do you go about assessing, okay, now I have this power lifter that has a competition in X amount of months?
Well, I use, like, regular sports periodization in the sense that I have a GPP and I have a SPP. So before the event, we get into the SPP. So now everything becomes specific to the sport. So everything is about improving technical skills on the powerlifting bench, squat, and deadlift. And we're rehearsing that more. We're doing more volume of these lifts. We're keeping the fluff to a minimum. But then the GPP, I address the powerlifter like I address every other athlete. I'm looking at strengths and weaknesses, and I'm trying to leverage the weaknesses so that the athlete is more balanced and there's no glaring issues that can lead to injury or lack of performance. So at that point, even if it's a powerlifter, you might look at their training and it looks nothing like a typical powerlifting workout, because now I'm just training the athlete per se to be a better athlete, so that then during the SPP they can focus more on powerlifting to become a better powerlifting. Because, I mean, I've given this example a million times, but I love that example because it's so glaring. But that O-line that I trained back in 2007, that his entire college and pro career trained under a West Side approach, where his only pressing movement was bench press. He clearly specialized on bench press, but his shoulders were completely messed up, and he couldn't overhead press at all. Like, he had a 435-pound bench on a 40x0 tempo, but he had a 95-pound overhead press on a 40x0 tempo. That's crazy discrepancy, but the reason why his overhead press was so bad is because all he ever did was flat press. And then why he was always injured is because all he ever did was flat press. So again, that's why, to me, athlete or not, to be overly specialized is, I mean, especially in powerlifting, like how many of those West Side guys like are healthy, like on the musculoskeletal perspective.
Yeah. Next question. I can perform full range weighted split squats with no pain, but if I performed weighted cyclist squats, hack squats, or other two-legged motions with the high heel elevation and knees very forward, I leave the session with uncomfortable tension on the top of my kneecap to bottom of my quads. Is this a range of motion I need to work towards or a sensation to work through? Definitely not a sensation.
I mean, the cyclist squat and quad squat with 30-degree wedge and barbell axe squat, like it's way more stress on the knee joint. Like there's
than split squats.
Yes.
A ton more for two reasons. One, the load potential, and two, the actual shear force on the knee joint because of the position of the knee in relation to the foot, and the extreme range of motion of the knee joint as well. So you're not getting any of that with the split squat. The split squat prepares you or assist with this, but it's nowhere near the same type of stress. So I would say look at what your back squat 1RM or estimated 1RM is. Look at what your split squat estimated 1RM is with a barbell, and then like try to see, is there a big discrepancy? Because so for example, let's say your split squat is only 25% of your back squat. Well, then the split squat that you're doing to prep the knee joint and build resiliency at the knee joint, well, your split squat is not strong enough compared to your squat. So now if you're doing a squatting movement like the cyclist squat, well, the load potential will be so much greater than what you're used to with the split squat. So the split squat for now is not really preparing you for it. So at that point, I would say, well, focus on keep increasing your split squat strength to build more resiliency. And then when you go on an exercise that's more stressful, like a cyclist squat, then you potentially have more built-in resiliency to deal with the stress of that movement. But one thing is for sure, though, is if the cyclist squat is giving you pain at the patella right now, don't do it.
Yeah. Or another strategy you could take is lower the degrees that you're doing the lift at. So I know a cyclist squat and quad squat and all should be at 30 degrees, but say you start at 10, no pain, go to 15, no pain, go to the point that you find that you're still not getting like the highest point without pain, train there for a while, and if you go up a bit, you probably build a little more resiliency, go to the next one, and then finally you will get back to 30 degrees, assuming that there's no underlying reason for the pain.
That's what I was going to say, because like even me personally, I can, like my strength on the split squat is really, really high, but as soon as I do bilateral anything, it just bugs my knees. But I've had a lot of like, knee injuries in the past and like stuff like that. So I think they'd have to look and see if they have like some underlying issue that they need to get checked out and worked on.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also like, and this I'm speaking more of a experience as a coach, and I'm not saying that this is what this person is doing, but maybe something to consider is I do notice that a lot of trainees on these movements with long range, they tend to relax in the bottom. Yeah. Sometimes they reach the bottom, they relax for half a second, then they come back up. If you're doing this, for sure, you'll develop some type of pain in the quad tendon and patella tendon because you're creating so much shear force at that point at the knee joint. If you relax, then the tendon is taking all the load instead of keeping a fully contracted position where now the muscle is alleviating some of that tension. And because this is something that happens a lot and that I remember in my early days as a coach, I needed to reinforce.
Mm-hmm.
And then this, it mightn't help the issue, but it'll help most people, is if you just get really, really jacked hamstrings and calves, you don't have to go as low because you'll be hitting muscle on muscle, which makes squatting easier.
You don't have to go so low if you've got big legs.
but it's true. Like remember, Noah, like in our courses back in the days in Huntington Beach, like he was a student of ours. Had a crazy, really, really good squat, like 500 plus, great form. And he would go full range of motion, but his calves and hamstrings were so muscular that is full range of motion was basically powerlifting, like IPF range of motion.
It helps to be a compact person too when you don't have as long
limbs.
limbs.
Yeah. But it's funny too that he mentioned, he or she mentioned those two exercises because your feet are close together. So then the other thing you'd want to look at is like their internal rotation at the hip. So if you're really, really tight there, having a squat with your feet really close is going to put even more stress on your joints.
It's true.
Yeah, so maybe a quad squat would be better. At least you have you
have more space.
Yeah, you have more space, but also like you have more adductor activation to help take some of that stress and all that stuff.
Next question. I like doing push-ups for fun. Something is satisfying to me about being able to do many reps of my own body weight for a few sets from time to time. When would be a good time during the training week to throw these in for the fun of it and for a check-in on performance improvement without holding back recovery?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like I would do it anytime. I just would not do it
before.
I mean, it depends how much, but I would not do it before the workout.
Yeah.
But after or any other time during the day.
Yeah. Or even on your off days, like if you like it that much.
Wake up and do some push-ups.
Yeah, because it's not like, so let's say you're doing this on Wednesday, it's not like it's going to affect your recovery that much.
Yeah.
And lifting isn't that serious. Like if you enjoy doing something, go and do it.
Yeah. When do you decide it's time to change a client's training split?
Depends on the training age, the strength level, depends on the goal of the phase, depends on their recovery status. So when we decide to change, whenever we have feedback that allows us to make a decision to change it.
Yeah, like recovery is a big one. Because generally, so say you're starting off with a client, a normal progression is to go from a full body session to upper lower to upper 1, lower 1, upper 2, lower 2. And that there's going to be based on once you get to a certain strength level and you're doing adequate volume in full body sessions, the chances are you're going to not be recovered in 2 days' time for your next full body session, or you want to increase your frequency to 4 times a week. You're not going to recover between those sessions. So then an upper lower split comes very useful. And then once you get used to upper 1 or just 1 upper and 1 lower rotating, same thing, maybe every 5 days is enough recovery between the exact same motor patterns. So then you extend that to 7 days by doing 2 different uppers, 2 different lowers. So it's recovery is the big one. And then even if you're going into higher volume phase and you're using like a body part split in your accumulation phases, it's due to the volume and recovery demands of that phase, and that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like recovery is basically the main decision making for all of that.
Yeah. And then I would also say, if you don't know, we started a blog inside the system, and the first blog we released was on training splits as well.
Second blog
we released. It was training splits. Next question. How do you use chains, bands, or other accommodating resistance and general pop training? Gen pop.
Well, you use it for fun as a change of pace, because for regular gen pop, there's no real purpose for it.
Yeah.
So you just we like to do it as a change of pace. People like it.
Yeah.
Like
in California, people loved all the specialty techniques for those that they
it's not it's not going to be a difference maker in their training progress per se, but like if it's fun and they're enjoying it and it gets them excited, well, guess what? They're going to be more enthusiastic. They're going to progress better in that sense because they're excited to try the novelty. So, I wouldn't overstress.
Yeah, you did bring up one point during our live that would somewhat be applicable to this. Like, you can use chains if someone's got lower back issues to deload the bottom of the squat. So it's not that you're doing it so it's massively deloaded, but at least you can teach confidence for that client that they can get in and out of that bottom position of a squat since they're doing it with less load, it won't be as intimidating for them. So it's another reason you could, but mostly for fun and increasing adherence.
I would say it was something like bands with Gen Pop, that it would be safer to apply it on more of like machines. So I think of like the pendulum or the leg press, the hip thrust, something like that, versus putting it on their primary lifts with bands. Because I've done it now. Like bands can be aggressive, so you want to be on the safer side with Gen Pop when you're applying something like that.
Yeah. Good point.
Absolutely.
Now, what bands are really good at? Now, this is a slightly more serious Gen Pop. Is if someone wants to be strong and is like sucks at bracing, and you put bands on their squat, they learn to brace real quickly because
even to unrack
you unrack it and it tries to pull you in the wrong direction. Like you learn to create stability. So
you definitely have to be on the safer side on like getting them used to implementing chains and bands, because it's a different feeling. Yeah. Like even if you unrack the chains to know now I'm gonna have to push more when I'm coming from the bottom.
But you can even use bands for kids though, like kids like really young kids, like 9-10 years old, like starting to lift. You can do squats with bands where you grab one band, you stand on the band, you loop the band around your neck and shoulders, then you do your squats with that. So I know it's not really Gen Pop, but that's also one way to do a squat pattern with a kid without really overloading the spine or anything like that.
Yeah.
Do you ever make the accumulation phase longer than the intensification phase?
Yes. So, like for example, like I've been training this guy for 12, going on 13 years now online. Strong guy, advanced guy, more of a bodybuilder. But him, he's exactly my age. So he's getting a little older. And he's massive, but like he's kind of like Flex Wheelers, like naturally, like really small joints, small wrists, small ankles.
He'll be so happy to hear you say that. He's like,
well, his idol, I think, is Frank Zane.
Okay.
Flex Wheeler was bigger, but him, what we've noticed, like after, I'd say like year 6 or something. Like the intensification phases are way much of a stress for him, and like after 3 weeks, like his joints were starting to be a little achy, and he tends to, and that might be from his background. He's been training forever, but he tends to do really, really well on high rep type of training. So for him, since then, we usually take the approach of 4 weeks accumulation, 2 weeks intensification. So we still introduce him to high loads. So he still gets some of the benefits, but we've learned that 2 weeks, it's a sweet spot. He never gets achy. It's all good. He gets the challenge. And then by after 2 weeks, we switch to another accumulation. And then it's always welcomed. And as far as, okay, that's great, because I know that one more week something would happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the split for 4 weeks is the same, right? You do 4 weeks one program, and then 2 weeks the other program.
Yeah, like So take a regular macro that's 12 weeks long with 4 mesos, like 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Would be the same thing, but it's 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks. So out of a 12-week macro is 8 weeks in accumulation, 4 week in intensification.
And then is there any instances then where you would flip it so the intensification's longer than the accumulation?
Yeah, I've done that like twice, but it's way more rare.
Yeah.
Because you only see this with really, really advanced lifters with a great base, a great amount of muscle mass, and people that are just more like fast twitch by nature. So it's just you don't see that very, very often, because most people, even if it's people that swear that they do better on intensification, the reality is they lack the work capacity and
the recovery,
tissue resiliency that you get from accumulation type training. So you still need to have a decent base of accumulation work behind you to be able to do well with the reverse, 8 weeks intensification, 4 weeks accumulation.
Yeah, I know I've done it before, but not 8 weeks. What I've done is 2-week accumulation phases and 3-week intensification phases, because 4 weeks of intensification would still have been too much. Yeah. So the overall macro cycle is shorter, and then you get your recovery week quicker. So that's worked for me, but also just changing other aspects of my accumulation phase work has allowed me to do 3 weeks without the recovery issue. So the submaximal loading and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What weight should you be able to use for a barbell hack squat compared to a back squat?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's 35%.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think it's also like how people do the hack squat is very different.
Yeah. Well, no. There's one way to do the barbell hack squat. I don't care about the ones who do it bastardized. Like, if I'm giving you a number, it's based on the way we do the barbell hack squat.
I'm just saying. So just take that into consideration.
Well, okay, of course. Like, if you're doing it from the ground, feet flat, torso bent forward, like George Atkinsmith, well, it's probably like 60% of your back squat.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's 35.
It seems right based on the numbers I threw out.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
One last question. How do you program the deadlift if hypertrophy is the goal?
So somewhat depends on what phase the deadlift's getting trained in, because if it's getting trained in intensification phases, you could just program it as it is normally, because generally we're going to push intensity during the intensification phases. There's a good chance that we're going to be working over like from 6 reps and down. Like, that's not unheard of. So if that's the case, you just complete it normal. If you're trying to train in your accumulation phases with higher reps, you choose a variation that allows for higher reps. So a rack deadlift variation and RDL, something like that there, that you're not going through the full range of motion, or you're not having to break inertia on the floor every rep. Is the simple as that. We have a full live that we cover this.
Wrap up this episode. So I know I mentioned it earlier. We did release a blog on trainkilo.com. You click on blog and it's inside the system. So we'll be posting weekly articles there. And then we are in the process of working on a cool subscription-based education platform that we're doing a lot of awesome collaborations within. So we're really excited to get that released. That should be in the next couple of months. Keep the questions coming. You can drop down to the description below to submit more questions. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.